What's going on, guys? I know it's been a while, but we're back. And here I have a special guest. We have my girlfriend, Anna. I'll let her tell you a little bit about her story. But the thing I just want to mention straight up is she's a powerhouse for the Lord, and she is going to provide you guys with so much fruit. So I'm so excited to have her on here. So just tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are now.
Okay, so I grew up in Wichita with my mom for most of my life. And then my freshman year, I moved in with my dad in Forgan. But I grew up in the church, both with my mom and my dad. So that's always been a big part of my life. And yeah, and then I came to Forgan, which is an hour away from here. And then I met you. And then I went to college. And that's where I am now.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, the crazy part about it is, see, I didn't even know she lived in Forgan until I saw her balling up one day. Well, funny story about that. She actually wasn't balling. She was sitting on the bench. I actually thought she was a water girl, so that's a whole funny story. But another funny thing is that whenever I was playing in the summers in Wichita, I had no idea that she was there, and I even played at her high school.
My old high school.
So it's crazy how small of a world it is. So Anna, tell us a little bit about what the move between Wichita and Forgan, how was it different, whether it be in the church, what was different about it? What would you say was different?
Definitely a lot of things. So I didn't live with my dad for a really long time. So just the difference in like parenting was really big. But also Wichita is like gigantic compared to Forgan. There's literally 10 people that graduated in my class at Forgan, so that was a big change also, like school wise. And yeah, also like church, like there's a lot of churches in Forgan. There's like 3 or 4, but I didn't go for a while there because like it was really different compared to what I was used to. So yeah, honestly everything about it was different, but I moved during quarantine, so life then anyways was kind of different. For sure. So yeah.
How do you think your faith helped you kind of transition and all that stuff that you were going through?
Yeah, honestly it was like a hard season of my life, like because like I grew up like doing worship and stuff, and so in Wichita I was really like in the church and a part of a lot of things, helping and like leading worship and everything. So moving, it was definitely at first really hard for me because that was like my identity, I guess, and I didn't have that anymore. But then I started making friends and we started doing Bible studies, and we like led worship at the church there in Forgan. So that started, and yeah, so it definitely was rocky there for a little bit though, but
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we talk about challenges. What are some challenges that you think that women in this generation often are faced with? And how would you say that they could overcome those challenges? And how have you maybe overcome some of those challenges yourself?
Some challenges I think would be just like changing yourself or settling, I guess. Like personally, like I've been in situations where I just like, I don't know, this is kind of more relationship geared, I guess, but like settling and lowering like your standards, and like the Lord like puts in your heart things, and like for instance, like the Lord put in my heart someone that like I can pray with and someone that I can read the word with, and like settling that. And I feel like a lot of girls nowadays, they feel like they have to get, because sometimes I feel like there's not as many guys, like girls are happy when a guy opens the door for them. Like, why is that the standard, you know? Like, why is that not, you know what I mean? Or like little things like that. Like I keep hearing like jokes about splitting the check, like things like that. So I would just say like you have to know like your identity in Christ before you can be in a relationship, because if not, you're just going to settle for things that isn't worth settling for. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you talked a little bit about your faith there. You were really open about that. So we're going to keep talking about kind of the challenge aspect. Through that, right, your faith, you're being very outspoken with your faith. What are some challenges that you have faced from being outspoken with your faith? Have you had any challenges that you've had to deal with?
More recently, yeah, because I'm working and, you know, people have different point of views than I do. I do try, though, to not necessarily be, because I feel like Christians have bad raps nowadays, like, oh, you're a Christian, you think you're better than everyone else. So, especially at work, I try to just serve everyone, and like everyone knows I'm a Christian. I talk about it, I listen to the music, but I think the biggest thing that can like make you stand out is being kind, like saying you're a Christian but also serving, and like, you know, not thinking you're better than everyone else. And actually, like, I think that's like one of the biggest compliments I get from people I work with is how like I serve, and, you know, I do things people don't want to do, and I go behind the scenes and try and help out as much as I can, just to show like that it's not like I'm religious or whatever, you know, just to like, because I feel like Christians have bad rap, and you know what I mean? So,
for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's tough at first whenever you go into a new environment and people find out that you're a Christian. They might put a stereotype on you or think that you're this or you're that, so they might be rude to you at first. But the important thing about being a Christian is that you have to continue to be yourself. Yeah. Don't change, because ultimately at some point in time they're going to realize that you're different, right? Yeah. So if they keep bashing you, being mean to you, being rude to you, right, and you keep on being kind, right, they're going to finally realize, oh, okay, there's no reason for me to be mean to them, because they're not trying to judge me. They're not trying to put this onto me or try to change me in any way. They're simply just being themselves. And then that way they get actually, that's a way where they can come to you and feel safe with you being there for them. And so I've been reading this book. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And you know about it. A lot of the lessons and principles that you learn in that book are based on religion, and it's crazy because it's not a religious book. It's more of just how to deal with people, how to interact with people, because that's something that you have to do in business, and that's one of the most important things that you have to do in anything that you do in this world, is how to handle people and how to deal with people. And what's crazy is, so the night I read a chapter in that book, it talked about how we have to do unto others as we'd want them to do to us, right? And so that's just a standard that's set, and it comes from the Bible. It comes from a Bible verse. Forgive me, I can't really remember what Bible verse it is right now. It's probably one of the most famous Bible verses, but really can't remember it right now. But just that, and just saying that Jesus always just taught doing to others how you want them to do to you, right? Yeah. And so I think it's important to do that to others, just to always be a nice person, always show the love of Christ to them no matter what, because eventually they're going to want to show that love back. They're going to want to give that back as you've been giving to them the whole time, right? Yeah. So it is really important to just not be ashamed and be outspoken about your faith a lot of the times. And so that's awesome. And you talked about how you were a worship leader in Wichita and how that was a big part of your life, right? So you knew this was coming. We were going to ask a worship question. What is your favorite part about worship and having that experience and that being a part of your life? And then after you answer that question, I have another question related to that I have to ask you. Okay,
so worship has always been a really big part of my life. Not necessarily like leading, but I really do enjoy that. And I think it's just an honor, because worship, like, it's like changes the environment of like what situation you're in. And so like if you're at church, you worship first and then you get the message, you know, it like sets the tone. And like, I don't know, I think it's just really cool that you like get to invite the Holy Spirit into whatever situation, church on Sunday or whatever situation. So yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you also said that it changes the environment. And you told me the other day that whenever you listen to worship music at work, people tip more.
Yes.
So I'd say that's definitely the Holy Spirit. So that's a way that you'd say that worship, changes the environment. But so anyways, now what's your favorite worship song? And why?
My favorite worship song is, okay, I've had one for a really long time, but I'm starting to really like Abby. But my ultimate favorite one is Be Enthroned. If you know the words to it, you'll know why. It always, every time I hear it, it just, like, my heart just, like...
Tell us why. What are the lyrics?
It's just saying that the Lord is going to be enthroned for thousands of generations, and just how worthy he is. And that's... I like singing songs about, you know, like, oh, I'm in a rough time, but the Lord is good. But, like, also, like, just singing, Lord, you're worthy. Like, and that's the whole song. It's just, like, you're worthy, like, highest praise, Lord of all. And so, yeah, it just, like, every time I hear it or every time I sing it, it's just declaring over your life, the Lord is worthy and he's going to get the highest praise no matter what situation I'm in. And so every time I hear it, I always love it. And so that's like my ultimate favorite song ever. But recently, I've been really liking Abby Gamboa.
Yeah.
And so, like, Give Me Jesus, that one was like a really big song in my life that I really enjoyed. Yeah, I like her songs a lot.
Yeah. What's funny about that is we actually went to Upper Room. It was the end of the year thing. And it's so funny because she had been an Abby fan for the longest time. And I knew this. And the end of the year thing had just gotten over, right? It just ended. And Abby was on the stage doing whatnot. And I remember I told Anna, I said, I'm going to go call Abby over here. And she was like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. I said, no, this is a time that you won't get back. So I remember just fanboying basically to Abby. I was like, yo, come here. And she finally came over to us and she took a picture with Anna. And so
she did.
Anna can forever say that she talked to Abby and has a picture with her. So that was a pretty awesome.
And she put me on her story.
Yeah, she put it on her story. So that's pretty awesome. All right, Anna. So now we're going to kind of transition a little bit. We're not going to talk so much. We're going to talk into the juicy parts now. What people are probably here to see. We're in a relationship, so we're going to talk relationship. And we're going to talk about your side of the story, right? So Let me just say this. Whenever we first started talking, man, it was not easy, right, to convince her at all. She talked earlier about standards and how she had standards. Man, let me tell you, this girl had standards, all right? So, Anna, tell us about how you stayed so disciplined with your standards that you had set, and you did not budge one bit. Whenever I was pursuing her, she did not budge one bit. And mind you, I'd been praying. Man, I had standards too, but whenever I met her, I thought nobody has standards the way I did, which that made me want to pursue her even more because I knew she was a real deal once I saw her standards. But Anna, how did you stay so disciplined to your standards even whenever you thought that you had feelings for me? You started to see, okay, I see the feelings creeping in. I need to stay strong, Lord. How did you do that?
So I've always kind of had standards. I grew up in the church. Like, you know, I knew I wasn't going to get with some, like, random guy. But, like, in a previous relationship, I had, like, let down some, like, guard, I guess, or, like, my standards. And that, like, really affected my relationship with the Lord. And so whenever that ended, I knew, like, I couldn't go back to that. And so I knew I had to do it even stronger and, like, be even more intentional because, like, I knew I wanted what the Lord wanted for me, and I didn't want to just live life trying to, like, make myself happy or whatever, because it wasn't going to fulfill what I wanted if it was coming from my own desires. And so that's kind of, like, where it started. And then once I met you, obviously I liked you, but I don't know, I think I was just really trying to get my life with the Lord and being intentional with making sure I was hearing from him, especially because, you know, we were like juniors, basically seniors in high school. Yeah. So it was getting ready to be a pivotal point in our lives of college and what life's going to look like after that. And so just making sure that, you know, I wasn't being distracted with some boy. I wanted to make sure it was from the Lord and make sure that, yeah, that's what he wanted for me. So a practical thing that I did was to make sure that I wasn't listening to my feelings. Made a list, and if you did not meet the requirements on the list, then I wasn't going to date you, and the Lord provided because we're dating now. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to kind of decipher those feelings, right? Because there's feelings, and then there's a relationship that the Lord wants for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough thing whenever you just go through a breakup and you just want to bounce back and have another relationship to kind of fill that void, right? Mm-hmm. I grew up around girls my whole life. I've been around girls, the men in the house are always working, always out of town. They kind of push that, you got to stay in school, you got to stay disciplined, you got to do this, you got to do that, because they're out working in the fields when it's cold, when it's hot, they're always out working. And so throughout my whole life, they've always been working. So I've just kind of been left alone. My cousin and I have just kind of been left alone with the girls to raise us, right? They did an amazing job, and they've also taught us how to just treat a girl right. But whenever my sisters have gone through breakups recently, I didn't know how to kind of manage that by being a brother. It's easier for me to do it from the outside looking in, because it's a different type of pain whenever it's your own blood going through that stuff, right? But I just remember even myself being in a position to where you try to convince yourself that it's the right relationship that you're pursuing, right? Mm-hmm. You try to convince yourself that, oh, the Lord wants this for me, when truly it's not. And you can say, oh, I prayed last night about it and this happened. But whenever it's really from the Lord, you're going to know, right? So I think it's important for me, I say this for myself too, not to manipulate yourself into thinking that it's from the Lord when it's really not. And you deep down know it's not, just so you can numb that pain, right? So I think it's awesome that you said that, because I think it's really important to just realize that there's a difference between you wanting something and the Lord wanting something for you. But yeah, I think it's really important to differentiate those two things,
especially like during that time, like the amount of time like I had to spend in prayer. Like I had to, it wasn't like, oh God, like if you want this to happen, let it happen. Like, yeah, it was gonna happen if you wanted it to ultimately, but like spending time in the Word and praying, like, your will be done even if this hurts, because like I liked you, I wanted to date you, but I didn't want to do it if it wasn't like in God's will. So yeah, for sure. And I think being patient is a really really important part of that whole process, and knowing that we'll go into that a little bit later, and you'll know when we're talking about that. But one question I do want to ask you is how you perceive, how you can perceive the difference, and how you can tell apart the difference from a man of God and a Christian guy. How would you say? That's a really kind of loaded, tough question. Some people may have different opinions on that, but we just kind of want to know. Honestly, I think the difference is like his personal life, like his prayer life, and like if I have to drag you or a guy to church every Sunday, like that's a Christian boy. Like as a man of God, you are like the leader, and like you'll pray for me behind closed doors when it's not like a big thing, so that like his personal life and how he like is he pursuing God himself, because I think a big thing is like we didn't pursue each other first, we pursued God, and God brought us together. And I think if you are pursuing a Christian boy, it's you two pursuing each other, not God. And so that, and also I think I don't know, I think it's just harder to be like, you can just like being with you like as a man of God, there's so much joy, and there's so much just like you can just feel that it's from God, like. And I think with like a Christian guy, or like for anyone in a relationship with a Christian boy, it just feels like almost discouraged. Like, yes, there's highs, but there's lows, and I feel like when you don't have God as the foundation, your relationship's going to be all over. And if you don't have like, if the guy isn't like his foundation isn't the Lord, then you guys are going to be everywhere with everything, you know, because you don't have that foundation. So
sure.
I think you can just feel it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And man, I think she pointed out something really important there was the foundation part about it, right? Whenever you're pursuing a woman, right? I think it's important for them. Women are like to be independent, right? But they also want to let their guard down at some point in time. And so they're going to need a man who is there to support them through that so that they can put their guard down, right? But in order for them to actually trust you, you're going to have something as a foundation, as she just said. You're going to have a foundation that's firm and that's strong, because you yourself are going to need a foundation, right? And you're going to need something higher than you to be able to uphold you to the standards, to meet her standards, right? Whatever she has in place, whatever she has that she wants in a man, you're going to have to be that. And you guys are going to have something to fall back on, right? So I think it's really important to get your relationship right with the Lord first. And don't do it for the relationship. Do it for God. Do it for Jesus alone. As she pointed out, you each have to be going after the Lord, and the Lord at some point will let you guys meet. You guys aren't going to each other. So you're going to the Lord on your own terms, and the Lord will put you together whenever he genuinely sees that you're going towards him, because that's really important, is having a foundation. And a girl's going to want a man who has his life in check, and the only way he's going to have his life in check is if he has something to check him, and that's ultimately going to be the Lord. Another question I have for you is, what does a man have to do in order for you to notice him? I know that's a tricky question, but
you wore bright pink shoes, so I guess
that's true. On the basketball court, I wore the bright pink shoes, so that's how you noticed. But
no, but honestly, I think okay, well, there's a story in the Bible, and in chapel they were preaching about it, about Mary and Martha, and Jesus was coming to visit them, and Martha was like trying to get everything ready, like practical, like clean the house, you know, cook food, whatever. And Mary, once Jesus got there, you know, she sat at his feet and, you know, washed her hair and all that stuff. But the guy that preached at chapel, he made a point, like, as Mary was washing his feet, like with the perfume, like Jesus smelled like that. And as he walked around, people smelled him and they were like, oh, it's Jesus, it's Jesus.
Yeah. And
he also pointed out that she also smelled like that perfume. And so when people smelled it, and they're like, oh, it's Jesus. Look, no, it's Mary, because she smelled like Jesus did. And I think as like a guy that gets my attention, you know when he's been with the Lord by the way he carries himself and the way that he acts around other women and his guy friends, and how he just carries himself, and if he's like different to you than he is to other people, or you know. And so I think that the biggest thing is you can tell when someone's been with the Lord. You can see it, you know. And so that's probably the biggest thing for me.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say? This is a really tough question, and I feel like this is a question that a lot of girls are going to want answered, right? So what would you say to a girl out there who has been seeking for this guy, who's been seeking for this man of God, and they just can't find him? Mm-hmm. The Lord has not provided a way. They're losing faith. What would you say to that girl?
I would say to not sound like, oh, but don't give up.
Yeah.
Like as a little girl, I always dreamed of like, oh, my future husband. And like you make lists. Like you're like, oh, I want him to look like this. I want him to be like this. And like you don't necessarily say them out loud, but like the Lord puts those desires in your heart, and he knows that they're in your heart. And if the man that you're longing for, when he's from God, like everything just fits like perfectly, like little things that you didn't even think you wanted, he's gonna have. And so if you feel discouraged that you don't see that, I would just say don't give up and continue to trust in the Lord that He has a plan. And also, singleness is such a gift because that's the only time that you get to, like, build your relationship with Jesus, and that's such a crucial part because if we didn't have our own individual relationships with Jesus, our relationship would look totally different. And I like there's so many times of like things I've done, but it was just me and God that shine in our relationship now. Like we would handle conversations differently, we'd handle situations differently if we didn't have that personal connection with God. So I would just say, like, make sure that you are pursuing the Lord like intently, because it will matter down the road, especially when you're in a relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And never lose your values. Don't think, oh, because it hasn't happened, it's not going to happen, so I'm just going to kind of give up a little bit. No, just keep on building yourself up, keep on building those values, because ultimately it will pay off.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to kind of transition again a little bit. We're going to head out kind of the relationship deal, and we're going to talk more faith-based, right? So I told you I was going to ask you this question, and here it is, right? So what's your favorite Bible story, favorite Bible verse, and why? And how has it helped you in a time of your life?
Okay, can I read it from the Bible?
Yeah, for sure. Go for it.
I bookmarked it earlier. Okay, my favorite Bible verse, my favorite Bible story right now is the one I said earlier with Mary and Martha, because it keeps coming up and it's just been speaking to me a lot recently. But my favorite Bible verse is in Luke. It's verse 12, or chapter 12, verse 27, and it says, "Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and gone tomorrow, is thrown into the fire, how much more will He clothe you?" So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so that verse has been one of my favorites for a really, really long time, especially in the hard season when I made that big move from my mom's to my dad's house, because my life was completely changed in very many ways. And that verse is basically saying, like, look at the flowers and how, like, the Lord takes care of it. And there's like a song, and it's like the sparrow, like he gets food every single day, like a bird. God makes sure a bird gets food every single day. Like how much more?
That's awesome.
Like if you're made in the image of God, how much more is He gonna provide for you and look after you? And so, yeah, just like reminding myself that of like how much more is He gonna bless you and provide for you, and just knowing, like, especially being in college, like life seems pretty crazy right now, like we're getting older, but like the Lord's gonna provide, like, and just reminding myself not to worry about what's happening in life because the Lord's the provider. Yeah.
All right, so our last kind of question here. This world's tough, this world is crazy, right? So to all the young Christian ladies out there, what would you say, if they're trying to navigate this crazy life in negative times? What is your advice to them? What would you leave them with, and what would you say to them?
I would say try and get as many like sources that you can, like watch Maddie Pruitt, watch Sadie Robertson, girls like that, because hearing that and seeing that from a girl that's walked through that is going to help you get through that also. And also just like, I know it's so easy to be like, oh, I'm going to do it later, but just be intentional with reading the word, because you get so much from it, and it really does change like your perspective on things. I would just say just lock in and try not to put it off for later. And also, like, personally with worship music, that's how, like, I'm like, oh, I don't really want to, but I'll play a worship song, and then I, like, my mind is like, oh, okay, like,
once you're in the presence of the Lord, everything changes, and it's a switch.
Yeah.
So